Hi, this is Don McAllister, and welcome to another edition of Screencasts Online. Well, this is the second part of a tutorial all about things, the Task Manager application from Cultured Code. If you've not seen part 1, I'd strongly recommend that you check out that show first to get an understanding of some of the basic principles and concepts of how things works. In this week's show, I'll be covering some more of the advanced topics, including integration with some third-party utilities. As far as the iPhone application is concerned, I'm probably going to leave that for another week and cover that in a bit more detail in a later show. Now, this week's free show is sponsored by Cultured Code, the developers of things, and I'd like to extend my thanks to them for supporting Screencasts Online. Now, we've already covered projects briefly in the first show, but there are some additional features that I'd like to point out. So, looking at the next view, we can select our active projects by clicking on the projects list, and we get a list of the, well, currently 3 active projects. Now, in this compressed view, we actually get to see the titles of the 3 projects, and also in this blue bar, we get to see the number of items that are contained within each project. But what you mightn't have noticed is that the blue bar is actually a progress bar as well. So you can see here we've got 4 items, and we've got like 3/4 of the bar shaded dark blue, and then the rest of the bar in a lighter blue. And that just indicates that we're actually 3/4 of the way through this project. If I open it up, if we look at the items, you can see I've completed 3 out of the 4 tasks. If we just go back to the view again, and this one here, you can see I'm 1/4 of the way through here. There are 4 items. If I open that up, yes, I've just completed a single item. So that list, the list of projects, is a good indicator to see at a glance just how you're doing with your various projects. Now, if you have a significant number of projects, perhaps there are some that are inactive, some that you're not actually working on, there is a way to easily remove the project from this view, and that's to make it inactive. So for instance here, this work-related project, new client to take on, if I just highlight the project and then click on the inactive button, you'll see that it's actually disappeared from the sidebar now under active projects. And we can also say hide someday and scheduled, and that project has disappeared. If we want to make it active again, I can click on here to view it, select the project, and then make it active again. That converts it into an active project that now reappears within our active projects list. Now, there is another use for the active and inactive status of projects. For instance, this particular one, this new client take on. Now, this particular project could be one that you need to reuse. For instance, here I've got new client take on. Such things as set up client files, register them on a database, create a press release, arrange review schedule. So it's something that you might want to repeat every time you take on a new client. What we can do, if we just go back to the project list, if I select that project, make it inactive, and that's now removed it from the active projects. But if I wanted to use this sort of as a template, what I can now do is select the project, go to Edit, Duplicate. We've now got 2 projects. Select the new project, make it active. And now that it's an active project, I can open the project up and customize it for a particular customer. And then if I go back to my projects list, I've still got the original project inactive, so it's not appearing in my active project list, but it's there for me to use as a template for future projects. Now, it's also possible to assign projects to your scheduled list. And let's just create another duplicate project. Let's select this new client take-on project. Go to Edit, Duplicate. Okay, there's my new one. Let's say now this was a new client that we're taking on in a week's time. So I still want to create the project and perhaps customize it, but I don't really want it to appear within my active projects until a future date, because I can't really do anything with it until we actually take that client on. So all I need to do now is just drag this new project across to scheduled. And let's say we're going to schedule it in 7 days, because I know that's when we're taking the new client on. Say OK. Right, and there we go. Now, as you can see, it doesn't appear within my active projects list, but I can edit the project, customize it for the particular client. But as you can see, it's not going to become active until Tuesday, when it will appear in my today list. So back to the standard next list, and let's have a look at another feature that enables you to take control over your tasks, and that's one of delegation. Now, built into things is the ability to delegate tasks or flag tasks as delegated to teammates. At its current release, it doesn't include synchronization with other things users. I think that's something that's planned for the future. But really, it gives you a way of delegating tasks to people and keeping a record of what you've delegated to whom. Now, for instance, if I wanted to say advise John of changes in client specification, and I wanted to delegate that to a coworker, what I can do is to go down here to this button and say add teammate. And that will produce this panel that gives me direct access to my address book. So let's say I wanted to add Chris Flowers in as a workmate or as a teammate. And let's say one other as well. So if we add another teammate in, let's say Pat. So I'll add Pat in as well. We'll say OK. Right now, Pat is actually a MobileMe user and Chris is an AIM user. And by the way, these are both Screencast Online viewers who kindly agreed to take part in the demonstration. But I can see here that Pat, the green dot next to Pat, means that he's actually in the office. He's actually on iChat at the moment. So I could, if I wanted to, go onto iChat and discuss it with him. But I know now that Pat is online. So what I could do is to delegate that task to him and then send him an email. So if I just go up to my next option, I want to advise John of changes. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to open that up and then just paste in some notes. Pat, can you contact John Picton regarding the changes in the client specification as we discussed yesterday? So I'll just quickly add as in. Okay. Right, what we can do now is to grab this and drag it across to Pat, let go, and you'll see here now Pat has been delegated with that task. Now that's really just a placeholder for me to know that I'm going to delegate that to Pat. It doesn't do anything at this particular point other than add a flag to the task to say that I'm going to delegate this to Pat. Now there is a way we can actually notify Pat of this particular change. If I just resize this and bring my dock up, let's turn hiding off. If I want to send a copy of this across to Pat, I can just drag it down to my mail icon and let go. And that will create a new mail item. I just address it to Pat, put a new subject in, and perhaps just tidy it up, and send. Now let's just add one other thing for Pat. Let's say this particular one, which isn't really appropriate, but that will do. There we go. We can see both tasks that are now delegated to Pat. If I want to see all the tasks, if this was a really long list, I want to see all the tasks that were delegated to Pat, just click on his name, and there we are. Now, if I want to remove delegation from a task, that one is not really appropriate. So what I'm going to do now is go to Items and say Remove Delegate, and that will take that off. Reappears back in the next list without the delegation flag against Pat. To remove someone from your people list, basically we just select that particular person, and then we can just right-click and say Edit or Remove, or we can go to the action menu down here and say Remove Teammate. So that's delegating tasks to people. Now you must bear in mind that this really is a mechanism to allow you to control your tasks rather than a true collaborative tool. I'm sure that's something they'll build into the product in the future, but for now really it's just a way of you being able to keep track of who you've delegated your tasks to and to be able to review all the tasks delegated to a certain person. Let's now take a look at some of these sync services built into Things. Things has full iCal support. Now you're probably familiar with iCal in that iCal itself does have to-do lists. If we just click on this icon down here, and that will pop open the to-do items by priority list. Now there aren't any in this particular iCal instance, this is just a demo machine, but it's possible to synchronize our Things to-do items with iCal itself. Now this is really useful if you don't have the iPhone application, or say you have a different mobile device and you use iSync to synchronize your iCalendar to-dos and events, so you can get your Things to-dos onto external devices. What I will do though here is you can synchronize with any of the calendars that are already existing, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new calendar. I'm going to call this Things to Do, and I'm going to synchronize with that particular calendar. As I say, it's possible to synchronize with any of your existing calendars, but if you want to keep them separate, it might be worth keeping a separate Things to Do calendar. So let me just pop iCal down and Things back to the forefront. Synchronization with Things and iCal is controlled via the Preferences pane. So if we just select the Preferences pane and then go to iCal. Now there are two different ways really of looking at iCal syncing. There's a fairly simplistic way whereby you can sync, well from here, currently we're set to sync nothing. You can sync the today list or the next list, and they're really the simple options whereby everything in either your today or your next list will be synchronized with a single iCal calendar, or you can select a custom and then be a bit more selective about what syncs. But let's go ahead and select the next list, and then we're now prompted to choose a calendar. So again, as I say, you can only sync your to-do lists with a single calendar. And there's my new calendar that I created, things to do. We'll say that. If we look at options, two options here. One, to show tags in the titles of your exported to-do items. For instance, here, buy milk, and then the tag would be errand, and also to show projects in the titles. So in this example, trip : is the project, and then your title. So I'm going to leave those both checked, and let's say apply. And there you can see straight away, there are all my tasks, including the some tags, so at work and at phone. And if we scroll down slightly, we should see, there's my clear out shed project, and another tag, which is a phone call. Now, these are bi-directional. So for instance, if I go across to my things list, let's run some Cat5 cables to study. If I check this as completed within things, you'll see immediately over in iCal that checkbox is checked, so I know that's done. If I take the checkbox off and go back across to things, you'll see that checkbox is marked now as uncompleted. So you have full bidirectional synchronization with iCal. Okay, so let's go back across and have a look at the more complex synchronization. So if we go to things, preferences, what I will do is I'll set it back to nothing and apply. That turns off the synchronization. So if we have a look behind, yep, all our to-do items have disappeared. And now if I go to things, preferences, and select custom. Now here again, I can select which calendar I want to sync things to. So I'm going to stick with my things to do calendar. I can also now synchronize my inbox or my someday lists, but also I can be more selective by choosing which tags I want to export or which items contained in either projects or areas. So for instance, if I wanted just my phone calls, I can select that, hit P, and it automatically realizes that phone is a tag, so I can select phone. And if we just say apply, okay, that's gone. We'll pop that down. If I just pull back this window, there we go. I can just see my phone calls in iCal. In fact, let me bring the whole of iCal to the front. I can see in my personal area, I have a phone call to make there, and some of the phone calls there as well from other projects. Let's go back to things, and back to preferences. And again, to switch off or reset, I can just set that back to nothing, say apply, and that stops the synchronization with iCal. Now, the next area of synchronization to consider is if you're using things across multiple Macs. So let's have a look at how you might set that up. Before we consider trying to sync things between multiple Macs, there are a couple of things we need to bear in mind. Now, you probably will have noticed there is no such thing as file save within things. There is just no file save option. Every time you make a change to a piece of data within the things database, it gets written away automatically to the things database. Now, let's start this by closing things down, and let's have a look at the location of the database. As you can see here, I have a Finder window. And the database itself is within your home directory under Library, Application Support, Cultured Code, Things. And as you can see here, we have a database.xml file. Now, it's really only been designed as a single user application. So technically, it doesn't really support multiple Mac syncing, although there are ways around that. Now, if you look in the documentation, it does mention that you can copy your things database to a pen drive, for instance, and make it portable that way. But I think most people now have started to use Dropbox as an intermediate file store for you to store your things database on, and then access the things database from Dropbox from various Macs. Now, a couple of things to bear in mind, but let's start by moving the database to our Dropbox account. Now, you can check out the Screencasts Online episode all about Dropbox, which will tell you more about Dropbox. It's a free service. You can store up to 2 gigabytes of data on a very fast cloud-based network share. And it sort of integrates really well with the Finder. And I'm starting to use Dropbox for lots of these sorts of synchronization between applications on multiple Macs. Now, let's open up a new Finder window. And now if I go to my Dropbox account, and in here I'll create a new folder. I'll just call it Sync Data. Okay, if we close that down. And what I'll do is I'll drag this Things folder across to my Dropbox folder, and then onto my Sync Data folder. Okay, so we've now moved that. Now what we need to do is tell the Things application that we've actually moved this particular database file and it needs to look in a different location. And the way we can do that is very simple. If I go to my applications folder, and we'll run things from the applications folder. Okay, I'm just going to double click, but before I do double click, I just hold down the Alt or the Option key. And you'll see we get this pop-up dialog, very similar to both the iPhoto and also the iTunes pop-up dialog box. So we can either create a new library or choose a library or a database. We'll say choose. I'll go to my Dropbox folder, go to Sync Data, and there is our Things folder. Say Open, and there we go, there's all our data. Now, a very important thing to bear in mind. Now, if I do that on another machine now, one that is synchronized with Dropbox, I can do exactly the same and point to the same database file. The caveat is you can't have both versions of Things open, otherwise you are likely to get into trouble. Things will allow you to open on two separate machines, but unfortunately any changes that you make on one of the machines probably won't get written away. Only the first machine that accesses the database file. So it is possible, but it's not technically supported by Things itself. So you just have to be careful that you only open Things on a single machine at any one time, and before you move across to the next machine, that you close Things down. So with that limitation in mind, it does actually work very well. I've been using it for a while now on my MacBook Pro and my Mac Pro, and it seems to be okay. Now, there is one other area of sync, and that's iPhone sync, but I think we'll leave that to a separate show. I'll do a shorter show just on the iPhone client itself. The iPhone Things client is a completely standalone application, although it will sync with Things for Mac. But we'll leave that till I have a bit more time to explore the Things iPhone application in a bit more detail. For the next section, I'd like to take a look at some really neat integration that's been made possible by Things' full support for AppleScript. And I think you'll be quite impressed by some of the integration for various utilities, including my favorite LaunchBar. So let's take a look at that. Because Things has full support for AppleScript, there are 3 plugins that enable integration with 3 of the top utilities available for the Mac. That will be LaunchBar, Google Search Bar, and also Quicksilver. Now, if you're familiar with these applications, they're all applications that allow you to do various things, mainly via the keyboard. So in this particular instance, what they've done is to develop some integration that allows you to compose and send tasks, send to-do items directly to Things from those 3 applications without your hand having to leave the keyboard. What we'll have a look at is the LaunchBar integration. That's the one I'm most familiar with, and that's currently my application switcher of choice. And we'll be doing a full show on LaunchBar as soon as they have the final full version of LaunchBar version 5 available. I think they're currently up to release candidate 5. But let's see how to do this. Now, you can get full instructions by going across to the Things wiki. And there are instructions for all 3 applications, but as you can see here, this is the page for the Things plugin for LaunchBar. Basically, it's a matter of downloading this particular AppleScript. Now, it's a relatively small piece of code, so it downloads very quickly. If we open the Finder up to have a look at that, there we have add to things.applescript. I'll pop that down. And we've got another Finder window already open here, which is, as you can see here, this is under my home folder, or my home directory, under library, under application support, LaunchBar, and then there's an actions folder. Now, all you need to do basically is just drag the AppleScript from your downloads directory across to your actions folder. Now, you can either rescan your indexes within LaunchBar, but to be honest, what I've found easier and more reliable is to actually quit LaunchBar and then to start it back up again. And now with LaunchBar reloaded, if I just type ADDTO, you'll see here we have a new entry, Add to Things. This gives us now direct entry into the Things application without actually having to have the application at the forefront. And to add a command in, I just type spacebar. And then I can just type in my to-do action. Hit return, and then seamlessly in the background, that text has been passed along to Things. Let me just open Things up. And it's looking good. If we look in the inbox, lo and behold, there is our new to-do action. But it actually gets better than this. So if I, let me just resize this window, and I'll just pop this down here slightly. As well as being able to enter just standard text, there's also a syntax so that you can add tags, project names, notes, and dates in as well. Now, if you remember back to the first show, we have some standard tags that we've set up. You can, of course, create new tags as you go along, but you need to use existing tags if you're going to use this technique. It won't actually create new tags for you. So here, for instance, we have phone, online, work, admin, etc. If I again go to LaunchBar, so I'm just using Command Spacebar to invoke LaunchBar. Now, because it's the last thing I used in LaunchBar, it's actually popped up straight away, but I could just type in ADDTO or even a shorter abbreviation to bring that entry up. Hit the spacebar. I'll just remember the last thing I wrote, but I'm just going to overtype that. So I've just typed in #phone space contact Joe about tickets. If I hit return, you'll see straight away, straight into the inbox, contact Joe about tickets, and that #phone has actually been converted into a tag. So that's we've been able to assign a tag directly from within LaunchBar. But again, it gets even better. So again, if I do Command Spacebar, then hit Spacebar again to pop up the entry window and just overtype what I wrote before. Okay, it's getting a little bit more complex now, but basically what I've done here, if I just go back to the beginning, #admin, so we know there's an admin tag, file papers, and then 2 colons, must find the additional paperwork or additional copies. If I hit return now, you'll see that I have a new entry in my inbox, file papers. I have the admin tag. If I open it up, must find the additional copies is actually pasted in as a note. Let's just try another one. Again, just invoking a LaunchBar using Command Space, and then hitting Spacebar to bring up the entry panel. Right, now I've enclosed within square brackets clear out shed, and then just check on tools situation, hit return, and you'll see it hasn't appeared within the inbox, but if I go to my clear out shed, you'll see here, check on the tools situation. Now that hash for a tag and the square brackets for the project and the title and the notes, you don't have to put them in any particular order, and they are fully interchangeable. Obviously, you'll need to put the name of the task, then 2 colons, and then the notes for that to work, but everything else can go anywhere. So if you only remember to put a tag on at the once you've typed in the line, you can actually pop that on at the end. Let's create a new entry. Reorganize Studio. Let's put a tag in, something I need to do online. Let's give it a name, research control surfaces. Now I know I'm not actually going to be able to do this for a couple of days. Say in 3 days time, I can put a greater than sign, then +3, hit enter, go to my Reorganize Studio project, and there's my research control surfaces with the online tag and 3 days left, because that greater than sign +3 has actually given me a due date, which it's appended to the to-do item itself. If you wanted to put an actual date, now before assigning dates, you just need to double check your date format. So if you go to System Preferences, Language and Text, and then go to Formats, right, you'll see my date format is day, month, and year separated by slashes. So let me close that down. Let's just close these down as well so we can see them all. Again, Command Space, Spacebar, and then I'll keep the same task. I'll just go to the end. Let's research something else. Research mics, greater than. Let's put an actual date in. Well, today is the 6th of October. So let's say I want to do that on the 10th of October. So the 10th of the 10th, 2009. Hit return. There's my research mics, and that's got 4 days left. If I open up that to do, you'll see due date of the 10th of October. So that works really well, and if you're a bit of a LaunchBar junkie like myself, it really does speed things up, so you don't have to actually go into the Things application. If you just think of something that you want to put in as a to-do item, you can just invoke LaunchBar, just type in the rather simple commands. The syntax actually is quite easy to learn once you've done it a couple of times, and that's your new to-do items safely logged away into Things. Just bear in mind that you need to have existing tags and existing projects. It won't actually create them for you. But I think that's a really neat feature. And of course, this also works with both Quicksilver and also with Google Search Bar as well. Again, check the wiki for the installation instructions for those other 2 applications. The syntax remains the same. It's just the installation instructions that are slightly different. But I really like the integration with LaunchBar. I think it's a really useful feature. Just one last thing before we move away from using this integration that I forgot to mention. If I create another entry, you don't necessarily have to use the full keyword. So if I just type #on for online and then a new task. Again, I've not assigned a project, so it's going to go into my inbox. I just hit return. You'll see that it's picked up ON and it's expanded that to online. So obviously that will only work if you have a unique tag that begins with ON, but just a time-saving feature for you rather than typing in the full tag. Okay, so that's enough for this week. Now, I had intended in the second part to cover the iPhone application, but to be honest, I sort of underestimated just how much there was to cover in the second part of the show. So I think we'll leave the iPhone as a completely separate show, probably not next week, but in the coming month or so. I'll take a look at the iPhone itself. There has been some discussions over on the Screencast Online forum about the synchronization of the iPhone application with the Mac application, in that it is limited just to the local Wi-Fi network. And it appears to be a bit of a deal breaker for some people in that they really want syncing across the web so that you don't have to sync locally. You can sync when you're away from your local area network. Now, in discussions with the developers, now they have assured me that web syncing is on the way. Not too sure when it's going to arrive, but that is definitely in the roadmap. So if you're hanging on for full cloud-based syncing, shouldn't be too long now. But that might be a good time to look at the iPhone application once that is available. Might do it before then, though. Now, the iPhone application is a full standalone application in its own right. So you can use all the features of things on the iPhone. I think the only thing that it doesn't support is areas of responsibility. But everything else, all the tasks, all the tags, etc., all work beautifully on the iPhone. But we'll have a look at that, as I say, in the near future. Right, if you did want to get a copy of things using the special discount code, you only have a couple of days left. Don't forget, this finishes on the 15th of October. So if you want to get a discount on the usual price of a copy of things, you need to go to the store and enter this particular discount code. But as I say, be aware that that finishes on the 15th of October. So it's a relatively short period for you to make your decision. So again, thanks to Cultured Code for sponsoring this week's episode. I hope you found that interesting. Okay, so that's it for this week. Next week is another members show, and as promised, I'll be looking at OS X services and integration with Automator. Really looking forward to that show. Apple have done a great job on services and Automator within Snow Leopard, so that should be quite interesting. Anyway, that's it for this week. I'll see you next time.